So, welcome. Thank you all for being here tonight. I'm really excited to do just for this evening with you all for this awesome event we've got planned out for you here. So a couple of quick notes before we jump into the main event. First things first, thank you. Thank you all for being here and sharing this evening with us on this. We're going to be a really kind of unpleasant evening here, but I thank you guys for being here at the Field Museum. I want to thank the Field Museum for being co-sponsors of the event, opening this space for us after hours, letting us be here and hang out in this really cool space with a lot of history and legacy associated with Peregrine Falcons, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then I also want to thank you guys again for being supporters of COS, for coming out to events like this and hanging out with us, because this is the excuse we need to then do cool things and ask for the Field Museum to give us their theater for the night. So thank you guys. Just a kind of quick note here, this is our final event for the year of the Peregrine Initiative. We've been doing programs all year long. Some field trips, some virtual programs, some in person like this. And this whole thing stemmed from a conversation back in 2019. So at that time, I was a fresh new recruit to Chicago Ornithological Society, and I was helping out with our Chicago Bird magazine and the blog. And the idea was, oh, hey, you know, there's an anniversary that's coming up here. It's been 20 years since the Peregrine Falcon was declared the official bird of Chicago. And I got to talking with this lady right here, Suzane, who you'll hear from this afternoon. And I was just kind of digging around, like, oh, this might be for a fun article. No big. Get some questions from a person who was there and write it up, end of story. But what emerged was basically a whole saga of getting to this point of why was there even a discussion to have a official city bird? Why wasn't it just a simple declaration? What was happening in the world at that time with peregrines and birds and in the city that led to that moment in time that resulted in now what we see is 25 years later, this event and this bird becoming our official symbol. So I'm hoping to be able to dig a little bit into that tonight with you all after following this film, talking a little bit about the past, talking a bit about the present, and then as we wrap up this year, talking a little bit about the future as well. What does this mean for peregrines, but certainly bird conservation in this city in the future and going forward. It's been a really awesome thing to see. Hey, you, how dare you? It's been a really awesome thing to see this series come to life. And again, I want to thank you all for participating, if you've been on field trips or virtual programs or whatever your role in it has been. And it's been really awesome to see the support and excitement around, frankly, what is one of the coolest birds out there anyway. So it's a pretty easy selling point. But thank you all again for being a part of this just fun year of celebration, whatever your role or contribution has been in it. So getting into the brass tacks here, I don't want to just stand up here and lecture and pat ourselves on the back. Let's get into the fun here. This was actually spurred by a British camera crew that came here in 2019. I remember getting it being on an email thread. These folks were coming to Chicago. They wanted to film peregrines in action, and they were hoping for some help trying to point out these birds and spot them. Didn't think much of it at the time. I didn't really know much about peregrines at the time, and I wasn't able to go out there and join them, but they were able to get the footage they were looking for, and then about a year later, it resulted in the film you are going to see here tonight. So this was part of a larger series called Earth in Color at Night. It is now on Apple Plus, and it features nature at night. In particular, their episode for Wild Cities features the footage that they captured while here in Chicago. It's about 27 minutes long. It's essentially in kind of three parts. The first part is about the peregrines and the footage that they captured here, which, as far as we know, is the first time anybody's ever gotten quality footage of these birds hunting at night. It's going to be followed then by a segment about mammals. I know they're not birds, but I figure you guys are nature people. You can suffer through 7 or 8 minutes of mammals. And then we return back to Chicago to talk a little bit about another aspect of bird conservation in the city. I won't spoil things for you guys. I'll let you guys see it for yourselves. And once we're done, we'll come back up here with some experts and folks who are veterans in this field and were a part of the process of getting the peregrine to be our official city bird. So, sound good? All right, let's do this. So I'm going to pull this up here, and we will get going. Okay, so just out of curiosity, has anybody seen that before? Okay, I've seen it like a dozen times preparing for this event. So there you go. I've saved you a subscription to Apple Plus. Unless, of course, you want to do Ted Lasso, that's a good one. So otherwise, that was like the 100% the reason why I got an Apple Plus subscription was just for this. But I think we'll go ahead and get into it. There was a lot to chew on with there. But first things first, let's get some introductions in here. I could try to introduce you, but I feel like you do a much better job of it yourself. So let's just start at the far end there, Suzanne.
Howdy, everybody. My name is Suzane MalecMckenna. I used to be Commissioner of Environment at the City of Chicago, which is how I learned to hang out with these two and many others to do some great things for birds.
And I'm Judy Pollock, and I'm currently the president of the Chicago Bird Alliance. And at the time, going back in history, I was the director of bird conservation for Audubon Chicago region.
And I'm Mary Hennen. I run the Peregrine program here at the Field Museum.
All right. And if I don't think I probably introduced myself. I'm Edward Warden, president of Chicago Ornithological Society. So let's get into it. I mean, I think the first question is just maybe providing a little context for what we just saw here. Mary, this is specifically directed at you. I mean, what we saw depicted in that first segment there with peregrines hunting at night, and thank you to a special guest, Tom Hiddleston, this evening for kind of narrating that and then butchering Chicago, but we'll forgive him. So is what we saw there, is that normal? I understand you were there, part of that process to help them. Is that something we're seeing that's a new thing? This is not something I certainly thought about when thinking about peregrines.
You mean is hunting at night normal for peregrines? Well, on the average, no, and if you go back in time, no. But keep in mind, you had a cliff-dwelling species that has now adapted to the urban environment. And what do we have in the urban environment but light pollution? So are they not going to take advantage of? Of course they are. Is it a common thing that they do all the time? I would say no. Yes, when you have young and it's breeding season and you need to hunt a little more, you can take advantage of that. But they're still, for the most part, a diurnal bird.
Follow up to that, is it normal for peregrines to make like a fighter jet sound when they dive?
I did like how they were lit up.
Judy, I want to turn this one over to you. In the latter half of this episode, we also got a shout out to the Lights Out program. He didn't name it specifically, but that's what they were referring to. Can you give the room a little bit more context to, what is the Lights Out program? What is he talking about here? And this was filmed 4 years ago, so I feel all that's different now from what was described.
Yeah, so Chicago was the first city to have a Lights Out program. It was modeled after the FLAP program in Toronto, but we were the first U.S. city and the first one to have one called Lights Out. And a lot of that was due to Suzanne, who's sitting right here. We had a really great team hard at work on bird conservation then. And I think also, the mayor of Chicago at the time, Mayor Daley, was very interested in birds and bird conservation. Hired Suzanne, who was just a dynamo and got a lot of things going. And she called all the bird groups together, and we cooked up all kinds of things. We had a bird agenda and, all kinds of interesting things. That was the time when all the bird sanctuaries were started. Before that, all the parks in Chicago were just lawn and trees, right? There was no natural habitat anywhere. So you could think like, McCormick Place, South Shore Cultural Center, Montrose, and then all of those in the interior parks, the big interior parks like, Washington and McKinley and et cetera, none of them had any native landscaping in them. And so there was just this tremendous flowering of interest. And one of the things was the Lights Out program, which came from this group called the Mayor's Nature and Wildlife Committee. And that was a really dynamic group. And Suzanne or someone from her department used to come every month, and we would, think of things to do and then do them. And our chair was a woman named Linda Day, who was that she had formerly worked for BOMA, the Building Owners and Managers Association, and so she had a strong connection with them. And, so we all put our heads together and came up with this idea that the 12 buildings should turn out their exterior decorative lights after 11 p.m. during migration. And, I think it was a pretty big success. So certainly the buildings did it, which is, and I remember this one building owner said, well, the mayor is always telling us to turn on our lights, and now he's telling us to turn off our lights. But, that just shows, that when the mayor really is in favor of your causes, you have a lot more, you can get things done a lot faster, so, yeah.
Okay, so Suzanne, take us back to the late 90s. All right, we heard a little bit, it kind of hinted at with Lights Out and some of the matters that Judy's talked about. What's going on at this period of time? What's the sort of political context that's leading to this sudden surge in bird interest and activity and a lot of these landmark sort of conservation moments in Chicago, and certainly the Peregrine and the Mid-City bird election being part of that? What's going on at this point?
I think, the mayor was really crazy about nature. And I will tell you, I worked at Open Lands before I went to work at the city. And one of my first meetings with him, I was talking about nature and ecosystems. He's like, what are you talking about? I said, like prairies and stuff. Oh, prairies, isn't that where birds poop and something comes up? Well, that's one way to look at it.
Not wrong?
It's also true. They do that. But he was fascinated by it. I started at a program called Tree Keepers at Open Lands, and so that's how I got in with him is on trees, but then he just got so excited about nature and ecosystems and birds, and once he learned more about it, the more and more it became a demand, like the city's green roof. He saw that in Hamburg, and he came back and he said, I want a green roof. We're like, yeah, sure. Yeah, right. No, I really want a green roof. We're like, no. Yes, I really do. So he really was the biggest fan for this stuff. And once he started learning about ecosystems, etc., that the beginning of the Park District Natural Area was called Nature Chicago. We were always trying to like cute little names, and that was to get it started. And one of the first places it started was actually Navy Pier. Do you remember that? Al Gore. This is a favorite story, and then I'll shut up. Al Gore was running for president. He was going to Navy Pier for an event. He went in the area over by the Ferris wheel, and there was a whole line of Cornelian cherry dogwoods, Cornus moss, and the red-winged blackbirds were in there with their harems. And he was walking through the area, he got pecked in the head, and people freaked out. And so they're like, we got to get him out of there, we got to get the birds out of there. So we were doing Mylar balloons and everything, and there were all these birders across from Navy Pier watching to make sure nothing happened to him, like people trying to catch him. But the unions there got so psyched about it that they started building, we did bird signage as part of the migratory flyway, right, with John Ragnar, and then they started building birdhouses. They built an osprey platform, which was called the Cadillac of all osprey platforms, but they just got really into it. And so all of a sudden Navy Pier is interested in this, Olive Park's part of it, so it just became a fun, I think truly a fun thing. Not really understanding all the benefits.
Was part of the mayor's interest to rival New York in their pale man?
I don't think he gave a crap. I honestly, I don't
promote Chicago can do better than that.
Well, I remember at one point being told that the mayor wanted a pair of red-tailed ducks that would be famous. So yes, I remember that. I can answer that question.
I did not hear that before. He is a tad competitive, but it was really more than any, and he did like being able to say we had more green roofs than any of the cities combined across the U.S. and things like that. But I really do think ultimately it was because he really saw the benefit of nature in the city.
Judy, I want to kind of turn it back to you. So in terms of, obviously having political support is a big part of this and a big part of these, but there's also the community support aspect of it. Where were sort of environmental groups and sort of environmental interests at this time? And how were they able to sort of successfully work together and coordinate to make this all happen? Because it wasn't just one person, one organization. It was a whole community effort. What was going on at that point as far as the environmental community?
Edward, I had one story to tell, and you asked the exact perfect question.
I got you.
Yeah. So I remember. So yeah, all the environmental groups I think worked together. You know, Chicago Ornithological, Chicago Audubon, now Chicago Bird Alliance, and you know, many of the other groups in the city. And the Bird Conservation Network was also pretty active back then, and was also a player in the city. And I remember, like, the Bird Conservation Network was sort of born out of birders' misgivings about habitat restoration. And so we had two conferences. One was all about habitat, breeding habitat, and then the second one was about migratory bird habitat. And I remember I was sitting behind Suzanne, John Rogner, like a whole bunch of people. And I remember when Chandler Robbins was talking about how important Chicago was for migration, I really just, I don't know, I've never said this to you, so I don't know, but I felt like I just sort of saw the lights going off, because after that was when all of these programs, you know, sort of started to happen. So you can say I'm wrong, but maybe, you know, just say I'm right.
That's why it happened.
Yeah. But, you know, but I do strongly feel that that citizens, volunteers, you know, people who are not professionals have a lot of the best ideas, because they really care about birds. They see what's going on. You know, birders are obviously all over the city and in all these different green spaces, and come up with great ideas. And, you know, most of the good ideas that have been enacted by coalitions and by groups come from volunteers. And yeah. Okay.
I'm just going to add one thing to that, which is, I think that was what made this stuff happen. It's not like we had a bunch of birders in the Department of Environment. But it's recognizing that community are the experts, that it's not, you know, ologists. Like I like to say, everybody have ologists at the end of their name. I mean, I really think that if we recognize that the knowledge is at the community level. Walter Marcis is one of my favorite examples in the Calumet region. Like, nobody knows the birds in the Calumet region, like, better than him in certain areas. Recognizing that and understanding that we have something to learn, and that the experts are the ones out in the field, I think helped us to understand how kind of, instead of us like, let's come up with this nifty idea, it wouldn't have worked without that collaboration.
Yeah, and I think there's a genius in that, you know, that I give you a lot of credit for recognizing.
Just a partnership.
Right.
With cool people too.
It was a great partnership.
Cool people.
Mm-hmm.
So that helped.
I'd like to pop it back over to Mary for a bit here. So in the context of all of this, what's going on with peregrines? I mean, our friend Loki here in the film literally said there were no peregrines. At some point in time, they were done. They were gone. We didn't have any. So what's happening at this point in the late 90s? What's their status? And, you know, why did they kind of rise to this public consciousness as a serious contender to be a symbol of the city?
You know, by the time you hit the late 90s, they had already made the comeback. So they had been extirpated from the state from 1951 to 87. So it was those decades that you didn't have any birds. And if you want to go back in the long story, so the 1960s North American population was down to 11%. You had none in the Midwest and East Coast. So it was you know, and that's where the whole problem with peregrines is where our Endangered Species Act, you know, the environmental laws and protections are so important. And that was one of the big pushes to come up with that legislature. But anyway, that's like topic. But it was through the reintroduction and the level of protections that you got the base of the breeding population you have now. And it was them using the urban environment that had the recovery be so fast. So they did go back to cliffs, and we have them on cliffs as well. And if you're gonna go Illinois, we were a plain state. We weren't a cliff state. So where were they? Illinois, Wabash, Mississippi River area. Very few records for our state. Now, by the time you hit the late 90s, you were already past those levels. Late 90s, they came off the federal list. It was another decade before they came off our state list. So they were well on the way to being recovered, and it was using the urban environment that gave the population we have now. So they're doing what they're doing. We don't put them anywhere. They go wherever they want. When I do talks, I usually work my German Shepherd in to say, you know, if I can't control my Shepherd to, you know, stay off the furniture, what makes you think I could put a Peregrine anywhere or tell it where to go? It's just us reacting in our being in a way, you know, we're the ambassador or the liaison for the wildlife, or in my case it would be peregrines, to the public and to all the building people to say, hey, yeah, if you do this, this is how we can live in close proximity with them.
Right. And I think the advocacy part is so important. So, you know, with Mary's work, with Doug Stotts' work, etc., like the kind of stories that have come out of into people's consciousness about the migratory flyway and the amount of birds we lose is huge, right? And McCormick Place has been such a really important part of our story, a sadly important part of our story.
That's one thing I like about the Peregrine story is because you do have a conservation success story, and you can use that as a segue or a sounding board off to cover the other things. If I'm proud of anything in the film, it's the suggestion of you have to tell this story about, you can't do a film on peregrines hunting migrant birds at night without talking about this whole problem of building collisions and that thing.
Yeah.
And that's how, and that, you know, they added that on. And it's just, the more we can educate the people, the further we can make progress into resolving that kind of problem.
For sure. Sadly brilliant is the way I think about it, because it is sad to see why, but it certainly helps the family.
All right, so this is not directed at any one of you. Just feel free to jump in, however. But let's talk about a little bit about this whole election. We've just spent an entire year celebrating this specific detail and this whole context which you guys have laid out for us here. Where the heck did that come from? The idea of having an official city bird, having an election, and I mean, doing it, frankly, knocking it out of the park. But I understand 42,000 ballots were cast in the city to make a decision on this bird. You don't just come up with that and overnight and then just do it and hope people show up. What happened there? How did that work? What came together to have that moment in time work out the way that it did?
You'll have to tell the story, because in my view there was only one candidate and it won.
Totally not biased at all.
It was all Suzanne, yeah.
It wasn't me coming up with it was, you know, I was along for the ride.
It was really fun. I don't know how we talked about it. We talked about like what are ways that we can raise awareness about birds.
Yeah.
And it was basically a fun thing to just get people excited about it. But then, you know, we're called the Chicago Board of Elections, so we called this the Chicago Bird of Elections. And we actually got the Board of Elections to create a real, it's killing me, I can't find it. We had a real ballot, a real paper ballot. And it had 6 candidates.
I think,
Yeah, so it was Nighthawk, it was Peregrine.
Red-headed woodpecker, remember, was there.
Yep.
Oh,
Oh,
Night-
Black-crowned Night Hare.
Night Hare was in there, yeah.
oh, yeah.
And then I don't remember the other one, but you know, it was kind of easy for the Peregrine to win. Number one, it eats pigeons, so people loved that. And then they all had campaigns, and it was right around the Clinton era, so he was the comeback kid, if you recall. Well, you probably most of you don't, but it was one of his campaign slogans. So because of DDT, et cetera, he was the comeback kid, and you know, some of them were really cool, but Peregrine was easy, and we had 42,000 votes cast, and we used the actual ballot machines back when there were paper ballot machines, and they were at Shed Aquarium and Nature Museum and all over the place, and schools. It was just awesome, but the whole idea was to make it fun, exciting, but also get people behind like making such an important decision about birds.
And I think the press covered it.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
they loved it.
Yeah.
They loved it. So that's what we did, because we could. And nobody asked twice, so we just didn't ask for you know, we pretty much never asked for permission in anything we did at my
You know what? The Chicago way. Just do it.
Yep, exactly.
I mean, to this day, I have tried and searched for a ballot. I would love to have one of those regional ballots. I will frame that stuff and keep it. So if anybody here has ever seen that ballot, happens to have one in their closet, let me know. Because I will pay you semi-small money, decent money for it.
Yeah.
And as I understand it, it was never meant to be just bird. I think there was some plans for potentially some other elections along the way.
Yeah, next was fish, and that's what ended it. Because we had our Nature and Wildlife Committee, and we had John Rogner, we keep mentioning because he's one of our gods of nature. And so we came up with a list of fish, and we were doing the same thing. We were having a bird of elections, we had a ballot, we had all that kind of stuff. And we had perch, and we had small and largemouth bass, and we had, I don't remember. But we also had a fish called the long-nosed dace. And, you know, not sexy, right? But, of course, the conservationists liked it because it's a teeny little fish that goes along the shore area and is great food for birds. And so, long-nosed dace, a couple on WGN who hate, you know, the politics of the city, who doesn't, gave it like a whole campaign slogan because, you know, aldermen lie so they get long noses. So everybody voted for the long-nosed dace. Like it was like, got 90%. And boy, did it piss people off, including Ed Burke, which is fine because, bleh.
Yeah, nobody cares what he thinks
and by
now.
the way, he actually wanted us to just forget the votes and pick the perch. That should have been the...
Gee, I wonder if that was a really early hint as to how that happened.
Yeah, but so it was thrown out because it was so upsetting, and it was, you know, it was thrown. Basically, the election was thrown. So that was that.
Wow. Judy or Mary, and I know Mary, you're Peregrine biased, but still, if you have kind of thoughts or things that stood out to you about that whole process, working with these partners, working with DOE, to just do this fun, silly thing and declare a city bird. Memorable experience.
Well, I think I was just along for the ride. I'm getting old, but I remember. And I was at the Chicago Academy of Sciences then, so that's the Note of Art Nature Museum now. And I remember that was one of the polling places.
Yeah.
I want to say Dick Durbin was a new senator, and he actually put in a vote.
Yes, he did.
I had an education bird that was a red-tailed hawk. He came along for the event and was bummed that he wasn't on the ballot, but you know, or his species wasn't on the ballot.
Yeah.
I remember that none of my colleagues here at the Field Museum voted for the peregrine, and they had all reasons why we shouldn't include it. Ask Doug Stott.
Oh my God,
his
the
opinion on
fights
it.
over which
You know.
ones could be on the ballot, the fights, not kidding you, it was ugly.
I also remember it was supposed to be like a 4-year term.
It
There was
was.
going to be a re-election. But
Stop it! I'm not talking about that.
Yeah. That didn't happen.
that didn't happen. But,
No.
you know, it's a good thing.
But there were a
We'll
lot
keep
of
it.
fun things, and then do you remember Tweet Home Chicago?
Yeah.
So we, you know, we love to have fun with stuff, but that was, we had bags made. It was before Twitter. Of
So
course
we
it was.
invented Twitter.
Yeah.
You heard it here, folks.
Hopefully that money would go to Ornithological Society. But yeah, that was birdhouse building that we did all over the place where people could come and build birdhouses and take them home. So we always had, and then the Sustainable Backyards program and things like that.
You know, one other thing we should mention is that we were the second bird treaty city, urban
Yeah,
bird
that's
treaty, right? So the urban bird treaty. And so there was some money attached to that,
That's
which
right.
that came in around the same time. So I think that also created a lot of excitement.
That's a matter of fact,
yeah.
one of the biggest projects it funded was the Burnham,
Yeah, the McCormick Place.
McCormick Place
Mhm.
Bird
Bird Sanctuary.
Yeah, that was one
Yeah.
of the first projects, and we,
Yeah.
Robin, I can't remember, the regional U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service person, and the
Oh,
mayor
yeah. Mhm.
signed an actual treaty, and we
Yeah.
had a live Peregrine Falcon there, standing over them, and I wish I brought our book, The Birds of New
Yep,
York City,
yep,
that we did, because
mhm.
it had a picture of that.
Yep.
But yeah, it was, you know, we took it seriously.
Yeah.
you know, people are still doing it today. Rockford just recently voted Peregrine Falcon as their city bird. So
just
it's a
copying
nice
us.
way to make that connection.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's still, well, and they picked the great, I don't think there was a real voting like we did.
Yeah.
It was just, oh, we're going to pick the best. There we go, you know. But yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
But it's still, what a way to connect to the public to, you know, hey, there is wildlife in your city and there's wildlife here that is important and habitat's important. Again, be it a springboard to the other, you know, issues.
And you have to, I mean, one of the things I was just thinking about with Lights Out when that happened, we were doing flyers, right? We were calling all the buildings,
Yeah.
and BOMA,
Yeah.
Building Owners and Managers Association, was part of it.
Yeah.
But we got the press to cover it, and what we hoped might be a little selling pitch, and John Hancock Center said it, is we saved money on electricity when we did it. So we're like, see, like there are other benefits as well, and that's a good thing.
Okay, so this was a nice trip down memory lane, but I would like to be a little bit more forward-thinking here as well. And let's start with Judy, but I'd love for any of you guys, if you have thoughts on this question, is just what's next for bird conservation, but even conservation generally in the city? I mean, it's been 25 years since these initiatives, a lot of which set the foundation for a lot of things that we do today, or then led to the next generation of things. Obviously, it's a little bit weird to have this conversation also after a recent national election and all those implications, right? So, I mean, what do you see as kind of the next, I'm not even necessarily the next big thing, but the next kind of high priority or areas where we're going to be kind of heading next to continue to push conservation forward in the city?
Yeah, I will say, thank you, that's a great question. And I will say, like, a lot of what we worked on was getting habitat into public spaces, and I think we did an excellent job of that, and now there's a lot more habitat in the public spaces of the city and also the forest preserves. So, I mean, I feel like there's still going to be some habitat work going on, but I think a lot of our work going forward is going to be towards reducing threats in the city. And I just want to plug, if you go on the Chicago Bird Alliance on the news there, you will see we're working pretty hard on rodenticide. You know, it killed the 3 owls in Lincoln Park. And so if you haven't signed our petition yet, we would love for you to sign it and also share it. It's the budget cycle right now, and we're trying to get the city to reduce the amount that they spend on anticoagulant rodenticide. But I mean, another thing we're working on really hard is trying to get the city council to pass an ordinance that all bird buildings built have to be bird safe, right? And it's been really hard, you know, and that's like, which Mayor Daley would come back, right? Because, you know, he would just somehow, you know, say the word and it would be done. But, yeah, we have really had to fight, and, you know, we were years and years and years, and then we thought we had it last winter, like, you know, about a year ago around this time, because the Department of Planning and Development staff we were working with was going around in presentations and had slides and was showing how, you know, it was going to be mandatory, this bird-friendly design. And then, you know, you had a new head of the DPD that came in, and that just chilled the whole thing. So, you know, now it's just voluntary. It's not mandatory, and a lot of the buildings are not taking it up. You know, because we've been much more vigilant now about what buildings are coming up, and they're not really taking it. But we are hoping that we can pass, and you know, Edward is a part of this too. The organizations are working together on this. But you know, we're hoping that we can pass an ordinance. So we have another sponsor. We have some aldermen that are interested, and we hope that once the new year comes, we'll have a hearing and we'll be able to get this ordinance passed once and for all. But, you know, then we have a whole lot of buildings still that need retrofits. Where do you find the money for those? You know, that's got to be a big thing. We just can't keep killing, you know, even if we stop with the new buildings, we're gonna be killing 10,000 birds a year, right? And we can't do that, so we also have to figure out how to pay for these, to retrofit these buildings. But, I mean, the other thing, just bigger picture, I think there's a lot of people coming into birding now. And that's really wonderful. And so people are like really excited about birds. And I think pretty soon, they're also going to start caring about the conservation, the conditions in the city that they're moving through. And so, I think the birding organizations have to be ready to have a place for those people to go when that little light bulb goes off, that, we really like seeing these cool birds, but somebody actually has to make the conditions right for them to survive our urban environment.
One thing that I would add is, as part of our future, is the more that we push for like green infrastructure, from bioswales to vacant lots that can take in stormwater or what have you, nature-based solutions, the more we're able to get habitat. And so one of my little dreams, which I think is starting to come true, is, so there's a lot of money for energy efficiency from our utilities, like $300 million a year just for our region. The Illinois Commerce Commission is now allowing trees to be planted as an energy efficiency thing. That allows us to have a bigger urban forest, which supports, birds and other critters, right? And so I think being stealth, as I like to kind of call it, right, and coming up with things that for other purposes that can also provide more habitat for birds, I think is really critical. Some people won't give a crap, but we don't care if they care about that, if they know that it's dealing with flooding, right, and it also provides these other benefits.
The last thing I would add to all that is, I don't think people need to take an attitude of, oh, it's such a big topic, we're never going to, I'm not going to make a change, or to rely on the organizations like Bird Alliance or COS or any of them to, oh, they'll do it for me, great job. I think we all need to find that, there's something somewhere down the line of something that you can do, even if it's the smallest thing. If you're into letter writing and you go, hey, Alderman, this is what I'm interested in, put it on their radar. If it's something simple like, your kids, hey, shut off the water while you're brushing the teeth, and we can save water. You can make that connection, make that segue. Everybody doesn't have to do these milestone things. If everybody did one little thing, it would add up to a big thing in the end.
It does make sense.
Makes sense to me.
Well done.
Loud and clear, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so to close things out here, I have one last very important question for all three of you. It's been 25 years. Time to go. What bird would win today?
Duh.
Pretty much. I can't imagine that something else.
I mean, okay, yes, we did host an informal debate 2 weeks ago.
Fair of a Peregrine eating one of those.
But if we were to give a fair shake, just like we did, who do you think should be on the ballot and who do you think would take it?
Let's see who'd be on the ballot. Well, I'd want black crowned nighthare now again.
Yeah.
Because I think it's such a cool bird, and now it's in Lincoln Park, not as much in Calumet, but showing the evolution of usually being in trees and now it's along the water and all those kind of things I think are pretty phenomenal. I think, when we think about, the priority species, and we think about the birds that people really care about, like the bobolink,
Yeah. I would say red-headed woodpecker because it's having such a resurgence in our area, and the resurgence is due to habitat restoration. The red-headed woodpecker is having a resurgence due to habitat restoration. So I would say that one should be on there again, and the piping plover.
I think the piping plover would win it.
I don't know, I think it might be tough. But that just reminded me one more thing, and that is, what was the project you did when we came up with a list of shrubs that could be used for birds and all that? What was that project?
Yeah, you can still find that on the internet. Yeah, we had teams of a birder and someone who knew their plants, and they would go out in the woods and establish these routes and then just see what trees and shrub, no, it was just trees, I think, what trees the migratory birds were using. And so we determined that oaks, oaks, elms, and hawthorns were the three that were, that were being most used. And so then we were able to work with Suzanne to get that spread and, have more of those trees planted.
What about, was it cardinal on it? I don't think we had any common birds.
His name is cedar waxwing.
Cedar waxwing.
Is that it?
Cedar waxwing.
Yeah.
Our state bird was sort of already off the
Yeah, I
list
think
because
we
it
were
was our
too
state
snooty about
bird.
it. We're like, ugh, we
Yeah.
can't have cardinals, right?
No.
But you're right, it was cedar waxwing. But I think that's right. I would bet it would be a fun duo. It would be like two main parties would be these two birds.
Yeah.
For sure.
Before we get away from this, and because we are wrapping it all up, we need to say thank you to you, Edward,
Yeah.
for putting this whole year,
Yeah.
just sit there and take it. You put this whole year of Peregrine-themed events together, which, again, I am highly biased towards the species, but it's a great way not only to celebrate them, but to celebrate birds in general and get people, again, spread this awareness and get these topics. And it's a lot of work to do all these things, and you do it every year with this. So I do have something for you. And it's Peregrine-based, so it's a bribery in case there's ever a new election. But
All right.
this is a thank you for Year of the Peregrine.
Well, thank
From
you. And I will open this momentarily, but I would also like to say thank you to all of you as we close things out here in Rabat. 3 really amazing women who have been longtime mentors and models for me, coming up with this community and following in their footsteps and doing this work. So, I mean, that's all she wrote. You're the Peregrine. We're done here, but I sincerely hope you guys stay engaged, obviously just with this cool as hell species, but just with this work in general. All of these people you see here today are still very active in trying to make a difference and making our city the greenest one there is, most bird-friendly one there is. And
I'm gonna ask you a question.
Oh,
what do
okay.
you think is next? What do you think is the next thing that could bring people together and get people psyched?
Oh man, I spent so much time thinking of this question for you. I didn't even think about what my response would be. I mean, I think I would go off of a nugget that Judy had already said, which is we are seeing a tremendous surge of interest in birds specifically, not just conservation in general. And yeah, like it was a COVID bump for sure, but it has not slowed down. We're well past that at this point. It's very clear that there's something about bird conservation that's resonating with people in a way that it never did before. And I think that's the most important thing to be focusing on and getting excited about right now, because at this point, those are the people who are going to become the advocates for whatever that conservation project needs going forward, right? It's these people who care and are deeply excited and passionate about birds. I think that's one of the most exciting things that's happening and is going to have a lasting impact for many years to come. No matter what that impact is, it's going to have an impact. It's going to be the kind of thing where 25 years from now, someone's going to be sitting here and be talking about, man, those COVID birding surge, look what happened after that.
That's a great point, and it's a great, in the thinking and moving forward. Look, there's a girl in the audience there, who's wonderful. And the Peregrine program, and I could sit up here and talk about peregrines all day. It isn't me. It's all the people like her that are out watching they have a passion for the birds and are watching the birds and telling me I don't have to do anything really but sit in my office and answer an email. I do more, but to see somebody so excited and do that work, that's where the success is going to be in our future of our bird work and our conservation. It's the girl with the little green mask in the back. Thank you.
All right, and thank you all once again for joining us this evening. I'm going to close it out now. We'll be here if you guys have additional questions or want to chat. Thank you all once again for supporting, being part of this whole process. There's a whole bunch of stickers in the back if you want to take some stickers. Please don't take the t-shirts though, because those are just examples of what's available in the online store. Those are my wife's shirts. She'll be mad if you take them. But we do have some awesome, like, this one right here, Year of the Peregrine stuff that's available online if you want to really represent your 25 years of Peregrines. But thank you all once again for being here and being supporters, and have a great rest of your week, weekend, and Year of the Peregrine.